Hey, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl, and continuing our series of revisiting Best Picture nominees, today we have my favorite of all, Avatar: The Way of Water. And I can't wait for this discussion, Matt. How do you feel?
I'm feeling good. Just saw this movie again yesterday. I love this movie. But before we get into it, I want to welcome in our guest, Josh. Josh, welcome to the discussion.
Glad to be here. Excited to talk about Avatar, a franchise I didn't know that I was going to learn to love again.
Learn to love again. That's good. Were you one of those people online that was like, oh, Avatar has no cultural impact?
Maybe, I might have. I'd only seen the first one once, probably in about 2011 when I was on a vacation at my grandma's house, and it did nothing for me. It did absolutely nothing, but I rewatched it, watched the new one, and I really love this world that he's created.
Watching it on a small screen at your grandma's house in 2011 is the ideal way to have seen Avatar. That's the way that James Cameron intended you to see Avatar. But let's get into this discussion. We've got so much to talk about with Avatar: The Way of Water. Dylan, I know that you've been this movie's #1 supporter all year long. Going as far back as our first episode, you've been saying that this was going to win Best Picture all year long up until when it premiered. But how has this held up for you across multiple, how many rewatches?
I am up to 3, so I've spent about 9.5 hours on Pandora this year, and I loved it so much. I mean, nothing compares to that first visit, and nothing is lost in every subsequent viewing. I just love everything that James Cameron did here. We've mentioned this before. If I could add any Oscar nominee to any category this year, it would be Cameron and director, which to me I think will go down as one of the biggest question marks when people go back to the Oscars 10 years from now. They're like, oh, how did the 2023 nominations look? What? James Cameron wasn't there? Crazy.
Right now, it makes sense why James Cameron isn't there, because Avatar: The Way of Water is not one of the hugest contenders there. But I think when I look at The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and I see how few nominations that movie got in comparison to Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King, I start thinking why did they do that? Why wasn't Peter Jackson there? And I think that I think people in 10 years are going to look back at Avatar and think the same, especially when we have more movies, when we have a completed series, when this has truly gone down in history as one of the greatest series of all time, which I really do believe it will. But Josh, how do you feel overall about this film? I know you said that you've grown to really love this world, but what was your first trip to Pandora and The Way of Water like?
So yeah, I've only seen this movie once, just when it came out in theaters, but again, just absolutely blown away by the visuals and just the world that it was creating. Yes, there are a lot of repeat moments from the first one. It's again, the humans coming to Pandora to attack. It felt in my opinion, it felt very Force Awakens, because Force Awakens is a movie that I really love. I'm a huge Star Wars guy, and it was kind of like the reintroduction back into that world. And even though this is just Avatar 2 out of 5 that are going to be, it kind of feels like that reintroduction, and we get a more modernized, even better CGI than before. And yeah, I think it's just such a solid, so detailed story. I mean, it kind of feels like an auteur blockbuster where so much goes into the world and the creation and the detail. It was one of the moments when you're watching in a theater and you forget that you're in a theater. You're just on another world because everything is so perfect when you look at it.
Have you ever heard of Avatar depression?
No.
I'm in it right now.
So Avatar depression was something that happened in 2010. It was a psychological phenomenon that was documented where a lot of people would leave Avatar, and in the weeks following, they would start to feel very sad, very depressed, kind of deflated by the fact that they'd been in this amazing world, and then they had to leave it and go back to their jobs, go back to their life. It's actually a psychological thing. You can look up, I think it's either Avatar depression or Pandora depression, but it's something that happened all over the place because people were so amazed by that world and so sad to have to leave it. I think that's why people go back to see it again and again, because it's such a marvel to look at. But Josh, was there any moment in the movie that really blew you away in particular? I know for me, there's a lot of the scenes with the whales, the shark scene really hit me hard. What moments really stood out for you?
After a bunch of the whales, I believe they're tulkuns. I think that's what they're
Tulkun,
called.
yes.
Tulkun. Okay. After they were killed by the humans, and then the Metcaina, they go and they mourn all of those deaths. That was so impactful because everything in their world, the way of water connects all life. And even though these whales, you don't hear them actually speak, you get some subtitles, but it's like, they were their dear friends who these humans, they just treat like animals. They don't see as equals at all. And I think that was a pretty hard-hitting moment. And I think, the motion capture with those scenes just absolutely killed it. I think Zoe Saldana, she always gives amazing performances in these movies. And I think some of the moments where, like, her heart is breaking and she just has the emotional outbursts, those are some of the most impactful moments as well.
I could pick any moment. You could pause this movie at any point, and I could be like, that's why I love this scene, and that's why this is my favorite scene of the whole movie. But yes, Pycon, that's my dude. Never refer to him as a whale again. That's so blasphemous over here. But yes, that whole sequence when him and Loak first interact and you find out that he is friend and not enemy, that is, I think, the best example of just escapist cinema that we've seen in years, where you can spend, I don't even know how long that was. It could have been 5 minutes, it could have been 15, just a little chunk that has no real connection to the rest of the story that you can just get away from and just be in awe of the visuals that you're getting. But I also agree that Zoe Saldana is the highlight of the acting performances in this movie. I still think she should have won for the first. Everything with the Sully family, whether it's when they're at the beginning having to, like, you get reintroduced to them in that opening, 5-minute monologue. I thought that was very sweet. To some of the times where you see the trials and tribulations of being a father and being a sibling, till the ultimate conclusion at the end of the movie when all of them have to use their newfound powers or skills, whether it's Kiri with her water shape-shifting abilities or if it's Loak having to help his father get back to sea level. I just thought it all came together. It worked perfectly. And people who say this movie has no soul, has no heart, I don't know what movie you watched.
The thing that I left this movie feeling is no one sinks a boat like James Cameron.
Yes.
God damn. He nails that ship sinking scene, and the fact that it's an hour and 10 minutes of one extended action sequence where it's just fighting and Tulkuns jumping and harpoons going off and explosions and the boat flipping. That is such an incredible sequence. Now, a big complaint that a lot of people had with the first movie, and I see a lot of people saying for the second movie as well, was that the script wasn't very strong. Now, I definitely feel like this movie has some very strong writing, because I think that writing is so much more than just dialogue. It's the characters, it is the world building, it is the situations, and I think that this does a really good job with those elements. But Dylan, how do you feel about the screenplay on this one?
I mean, come on, bro. This script is so deep, bro. Come on, bro. It's
come
just
on, bro.
great. But those people
doing,
to
bro?
me, they're just haters. I don't know. Like I mentioned before, how can you watch this movie and not feel love, not feel connected and bond with the Sully family? You get so many sequences throughout that maybe, like you mentioned, isn't written the best, but you still, when you have that ultimate sequence there at the end with Neytiri that Josh mentioned before, your heart is broken. It's crushed into two. And how is it broken? Because the screenplay, it connects you with this character, with these characters that you have no prior knowledge of before getting into this film. Even the leader of the Pandora Patriots himself, Captain Miles, who, in my opinion, is so elevated in this movie compared to the first. Like the first movie, I can see the negatives of the screenplay. Like, oh, he's just a generic villain. He has no real passion. He just wants to stop Jake Sully. He just wants to stop the Na'vi. And yes, he wants to do that in this one, but they grow his character so much.
I don't think he is an empty villain. I think that he is someone who has absolutely no ideological reason to hate Jake Sully. He hates Jake Sully because he's been told to, because he'll be weak if he doesn't. I think that's just as good a reason as anything else, because it's his insecurities that make him the antagonist of the story. And I think eventually he might end up switching sides and fighting with the Na'vi as one of their soldiers, because again, he has no principles, he has no ideology.
I know one of my friends, one of his biggest gripes are that, oh, if they need to escape from their village, they're just going to bring all the danger to these water people. Why would they do that? That's one of my friends. They keep saying to me. And it's like, I mean, they're in panic mode. They're a family. They're trying to keep this all together, and they're leaders in that community. And yeah, in my opinion, that was just bad argument by them. But I think that a lot of good writing that goes on in this movie, it's just very solid, and often good writing can be overlooked because it's just done in such a natural, organic way. And I think that also the thing that really elevated the script for me, because I think a lot of the beats, they can be seen as, we might thought it might go that place. But I think the fact that this is a sci-fi epic, and that you can really bring these core concepts of family, of colonialism. They're very generic sci-fi things, but they do it in such a detailed script, and like I said before, such a detailed world that it makes it such a spectacle.
We've seen all the memes online about people saying that this film has no cultural impact or whatever. People saying that there's not enough memes, that this film is just going to be forgotten. I think that an argument I've been making for a very long time is that the lack of sequels is why the first film wasn't really as remembered. It was because it was a one-off film that promised more and then didn't deliver on that. So I want to know, Josh, do you think that having this sequel, having more sequels, will lead to the Avatar series being more remembered and more highly thought of?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was going to say, because after the first Avatar, people will be like, oh, okay, that's a one-off movie. They kind of turn their brains off about it. But now we know that there's going to be 3 more. And so people are going to be looking forward to them. People are going to be speculating as what's going to happen. And I think that's going to be a huge thing. And also with the cultural impact, I think measuring cultural impact with just how many memes are made of it, I don't think that's a fair scale, really. The technology, the innovation is a much more obvious discussion to have about this movie. It might be less fun because it's not memes, it's not joking around, but there's still conversations that are being had about the technology behind it, about the spectacle that it is, that I definitely do think it is having a cultural impact. And just like the joke that it has no cultural impact is ironically giving it even more cultural impact, which is great.
I think the only way you can measure cultural impact is by the amount of Rule 34 porn that appears based on it.
Yeah,
so
of course.
It's the only way that you can really measure the cultural impact, how much step bro stuff comes out of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it knocks it out of the park in that regard. I mean, not that I've seen it. No.
No. we don't know anything about that. That's illegal stuff.
What's the next topic, Matt?
I mean, to piggyback off you real quick, every time Avatar comes back in theaters, the first one that is, it makes bank. The one this year made more than a lot of domestic releases this year even did.
Yeah, more than
Morbius
the
came back in the theaters twice, and Morbius flopped twice, and you got so many Morbius memes. So that's, I think, really the end of the discussion there, because at the end of the day, Avatar will forever have longevity because of how it is a just very different experience, like Matt was mentioning before, where people are just so enamored with this world where, yes, you may not talk about it outside of the cinema, but it's still there. While there'll be other huge billion-dollar movies like a Jurassic World where they'll make their money, but then does anyone really go back to watch them or go back to really want to revisit them? Not often. You can see that with each sequel going down and down in terms of its box office total. While we see here with The Way of Water, while yes, it lost a little bit of money, it's going to be either the number 2 or number 3 highest grossing movie of all time at the end of its run.
Now, do you guys have any nitpicks about this film? Because I know I've got one, and it's the fucking high frame rate. God damn it, James Cameron, stop it with that shit, man. It's not working. It's not gonna work. Let's just give it up, my dude.
James Cameron, put in a, when you do your Avatar sequel, put in an intermission, because I need to refill my Piacon cup and my Avatar popcorn bucket. I don't want to miss anything on screen. So, like, when I finish drinking all of this, I need to be able to refill it to, keep the way of water flowing, as they say. So, like, just put a little break in there. That way you can make it 5 hours if you want, and I don't have to miss anything to refill my my stuff.
I'm sure that there's a lot of other people that would also like an intermission so that they can get the way of water flowing in a different way. Now, Josh, do you have any nitpicks that you want to address on this film?
I do have a few nitpicks.
Hit
I
us
think
with them.
that I mean, right at the beginning, the reincarnation of the Colonel and all of his, his cronies, it's
Hoorah.
like, I love him as a villain, but it's one of those narrative conveniences that you kind of have to overlook. It's like they put it in like the first 10 minutes and you're like, hey guys, this is what's happening. We're bringing him back. It might be a bit weird, and it was, but he served the rest of the story in great ways, so I guess I can overlook that one. Also, that in the first movie we had unobtainium. Very on the nose. And in this movie, we have the Tulkun's brain goo as, like, the thing the humans want to get. And it's like, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. It's like, okay, you're really being so, like, superficial about what you guys want. Yeah, humans, they're just money hungry and they want that. But just, like, say you want to, like, take over a planet. Like, come on. That's what you really want to do.
Colonialism.
It's a small
Colonialism
stupid gripe,
isn't
but
that
yeah.
simple, Josh. It's not that simple, man.
I'm sorry.
I'll give one actual nitpick with the movie, and that's during the climactic big fight at the end. They have help, and then the help kind of just goes away, and then it just becomes Sully versus Corch, where like 30 minutes ago in movie time, but maybe like an hour and a half in real time, there was probably 1,000+ individuals from both sides there, and then it just we just have a fight between 4 people. That's it.
I
That would
didn't
be
even
my
think of
big,
that, but
nitpick.
you are completely right. Where did everyone else go?
I assume the people on the boat, once
They
the boat sunk,
evacuated.
got in boats,
Yeah,
and
you
evacuated.
saw
But
them
then where did the rest
evacuating.
of the sea people go? Because they never had a real reason to leave. Because not all of their kids had been saved. Because Loak's girlfriend was still with them.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Where did they go? We don't even see them afterwards. Like, we don't see them during... As soon as the eclipse hits, they're gone. That's a good point.
That's bedtime.
I didn't
It's
even
bedtime.
think of that because I was just enjoying the thrill of that fight scene. So, Dylan, as the biggest supporter of Avatar, I assume that you feel that this movie really should have gotten more Oscar nominations than it did. It only got 4: picture, visual effects, sound, and production design. If you had to pick only one other nomination for the movie, what would you give it?
As I mentioned before, it'd be director. I just feel like this movie works because of Cameron. I guess it's the same argument of Villeneuve last year for Dune. Like, Dune works because of Villeneuve, and he's the one overseeing all of these technical aspects. And I think that goes the same here. But to pick another one to give James Cameron his own little space would be cinematography, especially looking at this year's lineup. While I don't think it's an awful lineup like a lot of people say, it's still not a great lineup, and this, to me, seems like a crazy omission, along with like 5 other movies I could list.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, the cinematography lineup that we have is not at all what I would go with.
Yeah.
So I agree. I'd put it in cinematography. But something I was really struck by on my most recent rewatch yesterday was the editing. I think it's really exceptional how it keeps track of all of these different storylines, especially in action scenes. It really does a great job of having so much going on without ever losing track of any of the threads that are going through. And the pacing is fantastic for something that's over 3 hours. It does not feel like that. It really feels like you could
100%
just,
agree.
like, it flies by.
Yeah, I think what you were saying there was warming me up to that editing argument because, yeah, it does fly by, and you just got to give props to the editing at that point. But I do think that director is the biggest glaring omission there because, again, like I said earlier, it's almost like an auteur blockbuster where it's like, this is his baby. He puts so much detail into it, not only with the story, but also with the visuals. And yeah, I 100% think he should have been nominated for director. But I mean, we're all just overlooking the obvious one where it should have been the front runner to win Best Animated Feature, but not even in the race.
Yeah.
If the next Avatar movie were to win Best Picture, because this one, it doesn't really have a chance at this point, but if the next one were going to Return of the King, Best Picture, what nominations would that movie need to win?
Honestly, I think it would have to go back to what the first one won plus more. I think it needs to get director. It needs to get... I think it needs the 4 nominations it got this time. You add in director, you add in cinematography, you add in editing, you add in the score, you add in costumes, which I think were very good in this one as well. And then I think maybe hit the pull of Titanic and just like full out sweep everything. I think that's really the only way the Oscars were ever kind of... This season's kind of over my eyes that they will ever kind of maybe go back to a movie like this. This type of movie especially has to just sweep. It can't pull like a Coda or a Parasite where it just wins 3, 4, or 2 awards. It has to win a lot and like be a big record setter.
Something I'm thinking is if we ever see an Avatar movie nominated for screenplay, it's fucking over. It's over. It's at that point, it's winning. Like,
I mean, this was the year to do it.
but that's why I'm saying, if it's a strong enough script to get into screenplay, goddamn, that movie's winning Best Picture right there. That's just how I feel.
I think I was about to say the exact same thing because it could sweep all of these technical awards. That's like not out of the question for like any of the Avatar's movies to come. But yeah, if it just has like such a groundbreaking, impactful story that it needs to be nominated for screenplay, that's just like game over. And as well, if it even gets like an acting nomination, like I said before, Zoe Saldana, she absolutely kills it for me. So if she has like a lot to do in the next one, that could also be something that builds it up as well.
Saldana could pull something like that in Avatar 3 or 4 or even Avatar 5.
Thank you guys both for chatting Avatar. This has been a really fun discussion. It's been really awesome. I mean, Dylan, I knew that you were a huge fan of it. So Josh, I'm really glad to know that we've got another Avatar supporter in you right here, because sometimes I'm like embarrassed to admit how much I love Avatar to people, because there's such a reputation around people just not caring about this film. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, happy to be here. Happy to talk about it.
But as always, make sure you make sure you leave a comment. And as always, thank you for watching. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl, and this is Fantasy Filmball.